Fission Radio Show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. From 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV Radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Vision radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Today is February 13th, 2018. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here on the West Coast. I'm in Federal Way, Washington, so we might hear some background noise. I'm with my niece and her two kids. So, kind of giving you the heads up, we might hear some baby sounds. So today I have with us, I'm really honored to have this person on the air with us. He's new to our show. His name is Justin Case. He's an activist. He has been following me on YouTube. He's not really a YouTuber. He's active on Google+. So on Google+, you can find Justin Case, just like it sounds, JUSTINCASE. So Justin, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Lonnie. Good morning.
Good morning. So I was looking for the Deprogram Network, and I didn't have much success. Is it up and running if I Google it, Deprogram Network?
Of course.
Really?
The address is actually de-program.org. But you need to put in www2.
Oh, www2. Okay. What does that mean?
Otherwise, you're going to get a blank page. And that's done on purpose because of legal policy with hosting and website domain names and things like that.
So what does www2 mean? What does that mean?
That doesn't mean anything. It's just a subdomain.
Okay. Well, let's don't get off on a tangent here because I want to talk to you because on your page, I mean, you sent me a message to somebody who I'm still coordinating with this person to have him on, a whistleblower, and so we're still talking about getting him on the air. But I started looking at your page more thoroughly on Google+, which I admit I don't really go on to Google+ that often. Frankly, I just have not really, I mean, I go to your page because it's fascinating, all the stuff. You put on there a lot of deprogramming things. You had an article on there that I thought was super fascinating about the increase in deaths from the flu, from the geoengineering, from the chemtrails that they're spewing out on us right now. We've had a skyrocket.
It's an ongoing issue. I'd like to see collaboration between the nuclear activists and the geoengineering activists because it's all the same.
Me too. I agree with you completely.
Being
I
assaulted.
think that's right. And actually, Dane Wigington talked about this, how the geoengineering program started just about the same time. He was mentioning it one Saturday. I was listening to his show, and he said that the geoengineering program started just about the same time the nuclear industry started. So my my intuitive button says those things are interconnected, because it's the same disregard for human health, human life, or any life on our planet. Complete, utter disrespect.
Well, I like to think of it as we're having a division between what some people call a breakaway civilization and us. We being not in the know about many things and kept in the dark, and those having the information and using it to their advantage.
The haves and the have-nots.
Yeah. It's not just about money. And from the research I've done, I think it's safe to say that there are many different technologies available to those with means that can mitigate what it is that they're being subjected to. So whether or not people often say, you know, they're getting it too, they have ways of keeping themselves healthy. Unlike most of us who don't even know what it is that we're being subjected to and know what it is we need to do to mitigate the problems.
That's true. We don't have machines where we could purify our blood or our organs or our kidneys. Like, we can't just go and get some mega health treatment to give us new, fresh everything. That's true.
Yeah, collation is just one. That's just one. The body itself, I think, is a miraculous machine. And it can heal itself given time and a regimen that you stick to. And that's something that's kind of hard to do in this world of fast food and instant gratification. So I think...
Well, that's also by design. But that's by design also. And then what happens is when you change your behavior, I've recently really changed my behavior and modified my diet quite a bit. And it's funny because people act as if I'm punishing myself. But the reality is when I deviate, my guts hurt. I don't feel well. If I slip, I feel like it's really, I've really noticed a huge difference since I've been pretty strict on what I consume. And I'm especially strict about no chemicals. Especially.
That's good.
You know.
Yeah, I found the same with if it's got a lot of GMOs, I notice right away, and it just passes right through my system. It rejects it automatically, and I know to stay away from it or that product. But being in a rural area, I'm lucky because there's a lot of farming and a lot of organics actually. So
what part of the country do you live in?
When the area is aware of what's going on.
What part of the country do you live in?
I'm up in southern Ontario, Canada.
Oh, okay.
So the Great
Because I'm in
North.
Oregon. Yeah, I'm in Oregon, and we have plenty of organic food here. I mean, it's really easy for me in Oregon to have access to good, clean food, and even like duck eggs. Like I can get. Last week I bought 18 duck eggs for $7 from a lady who has ducks.
Huh.
You know, so it's a kind of interesting how you can actually, it's easier, I guess, because, you know what, it's a kind of a rural state, so there's a lot of organic and, you know, conscientious. That's one of my things about if I'm going to eat animal products, I want them to be treated humanely. You know what I mean? So the animal products for me is pretty important.
Yeah, I've been moving more away from that as time goes on, just because of, well, radioactive material affects everything, and there's bioaccumulation, as you talked about so many times. And with the milk, it's severe. With fish, it's severe, and it doesn't matter.
Yes, and I would not recommend milk. I think you still have to. I think it's really important for us to really modify and, you know, be conscientious about what you're doing. Like milk, you know, dairy in particular is pretty harmful. You know what I'm saying? In fish, just like fish.
Yeah. But surprisingly, like even taking a daily dose of baking soda makes a huge difference on your system. That coupled with something like apple cider vinegar, for example. Those two things work so well together, and they help to clear out your system of all kinds of toxins.
Do you do that regimen every day yourself?
Pretty much.
And how do you take the baking soda every day? What do you do with that?
Well, I brush my teeth with it, and I take a spoonful of it. I put it in lukewarm water after I have some lemonade, because usually lemon in like warm lemon water, about, let's say, an ounce or two, it raises your pH and you feel great all day long. It's such a simple thing to do. And as a matter of fact, in mentioning that today, earlier, it came up where there was an article about the amount of people getting sick and having this cough that's persistent. And I've run across some information that works really well. I've tried it. I've given to other people. It's worked for them. And it's very simple to do to get rid of your cough. And all that is pineapple juice. Like, get real pineapple juice, and it'll get rid of it.
It's probably from the pectins, from the things that's in the pineapple juice. That's interesting. Actually, in the morning, I take lemon juice and apple cider vinegar together. That's actually, it makes the morning. I'm a big apple cider vinegar person. I take it 3 to 4 times a day. So it's
good
been
for
a big
lots of
help.
things, even topical.
Yeah. Yes, actually. It's actually really good for topical, to be honest. This is the thing. We can learn to arm ourselves, and we can learn to take care of ourselves and be healthier. But it has to be an intentional thing. And it's like I was, my niece feels like, because I've kind of gotten very strict on what I'm consuming now. And she's like, well, don't you feel like you're punishing yourself? Actually, I feel like I'm doing myself a favor. I'm not interested in eating any of it. I don't want to go to Starbucks. I hate Starbucks. I hate their corporate model. I hate who they are. I hate how they operate. I hate how they treat their people. Everything about them to me is like, I can't handle it. So,
that's effective protesting, not out in the streets, but where you're spending your dollars. If you want to make a difference, don't contribute to the people that are causing the trouble, like Walmart and Starbucks and all the rest of them.
Yeah, for sure. And you really do have to do like a Walmart I've been a Walmart protester for well over 15 years. Let's see. Probably for a good long time. I think in 15, 20 years I might have bought one product from Walmart. I just can't go in there and buy anything. I've actually walked into Walmart and had to walk out. I just couldn't stand in that line and give them my money. I just went, no, I can't do this.
You can't do this.
She's got something to say too.
So I just don't go into Walmart. And it's funny, but you know what? People don't really know, Justin. This is the thing. People don't know. I remember when I first came to Oregon, you know what? I have to say, a lot of things transformed for me with the 2000 election. For me, the 2000 election was an eye-opener. How openly... And just the fact that the Democrats would not stand with the Congressional Black Caucus to ask for an investigation, not one Democrat, that stunned me. And then I started getting politically active. And then, honestly, what really shook me was, it wasn't even when Fukushima happened. It was when I had a nightmare about Fukushima. I thought Hanford was on fire. And that was a year and a half afterwards. And then when I realized, it is so out of control. It is so beyond out of control. In fact, everything nuclear is out of control. None of it is in order. None of it is in order. Not 1 ounce of it is in order.
Well, funny you should say that, because that's one of my biggest beefs, is that somewhere along the chain of command, somewhere down the line, and it was a long time ago that it was decided, but somebody had to make the decision to go ahead with this. And that is where it all started from.
Well, you know what you have to do? Maybe I'll have to burn a copy of it. It's an old CD called Half-Life. It's a documentary, and it is amazing. It gives a lot of that information. Who was at the top of the chain? And you can see their crazy lunatic eyes, how crazy they are, they were mad with power in those days. And this is why they gave these orders. They did not really care. They did not care.
Well, the thing is, we've got such a convoluted system working like an octopus, where the left hand doesn't know where the right hand is and what it's doing. And you've got organizations like the ICRP, which is basically a nonprofit that is supposed to make recommendations for radiological contamination and protection. And basically what they're doing right now is they're rewriting the books of what was acceptable limits before. And through their recommendations, they become policy. And this is how it's done, usually. Is you have these think tanks and these nonprofit organizations that have good intentions to some degree. But on the other hand, there's a nefarious element to it, because what they're doing is not only making the changes in the policy, but they put everything behind a paywall so you can't get access to it without paying for it.
Well,
and I think that is just as criminal as the kind of thing which caused, what's his name, that young guy who ended up in prison and apparently hung himself. And he was the one who was releasing information from universities.
Schwartz?
Yeah, Aaron Schwartz.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't believe for a second he hung himself. I think that's a bunch of hooey.
No.
I don't
well,
think
he was just ready to go to trial. Who would do that?
Yeah, there is no way he hung himself. They got rid of him because they knew that he was not going to get convicted. I think that they knew they were going to, but uncovering if he had really plotted a sane defense, it would have exposed so much. So much would have had to come out. They just got. It's kind of like. I mean, this is the thing. Justin, this is where World War III is happening. It's on. If you begin, it's like Michael Hastings. His car hit a tree. Spare me. The car did not hit a tree. His car was blown up. The LAPD brought over blankets and covered up the hole where his car was blown up. When does the LAPD ever cover up a vehicle with a blanket so no pictures can be taken? Spare me. I mean, this is the thing. They expect us to swallow the most obviously stupid ideas, like 9/11.
They think we are.
9/11. Like, honestly, I could not believe that people could swallow the 9/11. From the day it happened, you could tell it was a fake. You could tell what they were doing. Miraculously, within 2 hours, they found the passport. Wow, what a coinky-dinky. One of the few things that was blown up. I mean, it was outrageously ridiculous, the whole thing from the get.
I was introduced to something recently about that event that I'm looking more into. And I forget the guy's name. He's in Europe. I think he's German. But a scientist who understood right away when he was observing what was going on. He's a nuclear scientist, actually, is what he is. And he recognized what he was looking at as a detonation from a nuclear bomb.
That's right.
That apparently is buried underneath the buildings. There was 3 of them, and they were 50 meters below the surface.
Wow.
And when they exploded, they basically vaporized a certain portion of the building, because the impact of a 50 megaton blast would have so much force that it would only allow a certain amount of impact to spread upward because of the direction that it was focused on. And when that happened, the top portion of the buildings compressed everything else, and it was dustified, basically. So that Judy Wood, she's onto something, but at the same time, there's other things, just like the way everything is in this world. It's departmentalized, so that nobody really understands exactly what's going on. because everything's specialized. Just like this nuclear stuff, I never knew anything about it before I got involved. I always thought, well, that's too complicated. You know, you have to be a nuclear scientist to understand it. But really what it comes down to is that we're making electricity by boiling water, which is asinine.
Well, the whole point, the reality is, these nuclear power plants, they need a fresh supply of plutonium for the nuclear warheads, period. That's the answer. They need a fresh supply of plutonium. That's why we have these nuclear power plants. That's the whole, and that's the thing that's coming evident. It's evident exactly what they're doing. And now this is kind of the, I call it the come to Jesus moment, where you're beginning to realize we don't have any control over it. They're going to be putting SMRs on the military bases, those small nuclear reactors, because the public is rejecting them. The public is, banding together and not letting them be built. Whenever they try to go to any city hall, there's people telling them no. But the military can do what they want. So this is the thing, right now we have a president saying we need to give the military. In fact, this budget this 2-month budget, part of the thing was that it gave them an unlimited budget for 2 years. Unlimited budget for 2 years. They already get more than 50 cents of every tax dollar. And now they have an unlimited budget. I mean, and the CIA, by the way, has an unlimited budget. I mean, we have a Congress that is completely ineffective. They refuse to do their job because they're scared they're going to get killed, which, in fact, they probably would get killed.
I think part of the problem is no one is holding them accountable, or knowing who to hold accountable is more apt.
Well, I think we know who to hold accountable, but we don't have any control over that. Like Serco, do you know about Serco, SERCO?
Yes.
Right. And do you know that they have a Trump plan, TRUMP plan, Trump plan?
Nope, haven't run across that.
Oh my God. I mean, none of this is an accident. All of it is not an accident. These are just too far of coincidences. This whole totalitarianism. I mean, this is the thing. It's almost as if they looked at us and said, democracy, yeah, that's a good idea. We'll let you think you have it so that you don't fight us too hard. And then if you start to fight...
I spell it with a K.
Yeah. What, democracy?
Yeah, like they're mocking us.
That's funny. That's probably true, Justin. That's totally hilarious. Democracy. That is totally funny.
I heard something this week on Nuclear Hot Seat about the Just Moms winning a victory recently to get the EPA to start cleaning up that site. And they've got a public offering for comments right now until the middle of March.
Right.
So if anybody's interested in putting their 2 cents in, now's the time to do it about the cleanup that they're doing over there in Westlake.
I mean, if you ask me about the St. Louis thing, it's kind of a slap in the face. Their funding is 1/3 of what they need. They're giving them 1/3 of the funding that they need. And there's nothing in that plan to remediate or move anybody from near. I mean, there's families living less than 300 miles away from a burning nuclear site. There's no
Did you hear
plan.
about that cleanup?
I did. In fact, I read about it. I read a report on it on my radio station last week. I reported on it maybe a week ago. I read a story about it. And, I mean, for me, I follow this. Now, there's people, I mean, I'm glad it's happening. Like Don Chapman said, it's better than nothing. It's not perfect, but you know what? It's movement. And it's them beginning to say, yeah, we have a pretty serious problem here. And this is the thing. If you read between the lines between what they said and what they're going to do, they basically intimated that if they take away all of the waste, that it will cause other problems, meaning that they know that the nuclear waste is mixed in with the other toxic waste, and it's going to cause a fire. It's going to cause an explosion, you know?
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know the details about it. All I know is that from what Donna was saying, they're going to dig down 16 feet.
Yes.
And if there's a hot pocket below that, they'll take that out while they're there, if it's a little bit deeper. But as it stands, they're going to remove 70% of it, which is the majority, rather than having it all taken out, like you say, or having compensation for the people in the area that they can actually, relocate someplace safe. And with all the other inundations that we're getting, it's a surprise that they're even doing that much.
They have to do that. I mean, that place is getting catastrophic. If they continue to ignore it, it's going to be catastrophic. So there's no options on that one. Like, they have to. As it is, it's catastrophic. People are dropping off like flies there. Everyone out there.
Well, they are everywhere across the country. Just it's not being reported.
That's true.
The mortality rates are through the roof. There's a 30 to 40% increase in mortality on the East Coast of North America.
A 30 to 40% increase in mortality just across the board, every age group, every spectrum.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, and last time I checked, it was 800% increase on the West Coast where you live for people under 5.
Yeah, I believe that. I can believe that because cancer is...
That was a couple of years ago.
Wow.
Now they're not reporting it, just like they turn off the detecting grid for radiation detections. Whenever there's something going on, they just shut it down. And thank God for people like Bob Nichols.
Yes, Bob Nichols
puts out a report, a good report, every 2 weeks.
That's true. I mean, the thing is, we're on a need-to-know basis, and we just don't need to know. That's what they tell us, I mean, who
cares what they tell us? We have to do it ourselves. That's the bottom line. Nobody's going to help you. You have to help yourself. So for people who are willing, that's how the information is getting across. For those that aren't and are just a spectator, well, so be it, There's a lot of people out there that have an attitude like, well, what can I do about it? And they feel helpless because it's such a huge problem. They don't know what to do with themselves. I think that's one of the biggest problems, is just overcoming this anxiety of feeling helplessness, that you can't do anything, when in fact, any change has always come about because of a few people who are just adamant and irate about making a change towards something. And there's many activists out there that are talking about it. I don't, because I concentrate on other things, and I'm more of an instigator than I am, a speaker, per se. I've been offered a lot of times, I've been told I should do it, but it means sacrificing time away from other things that I could be doing that are more effective because I reach a lot of people. So for some people, it might seem ineffective for them of what they're doing in social media. For me, I took it on as a necessity to understand how it works as part of a business model.
How long have you been doing it? I know I've been seeing you for a long time.
I started Christmas, I guess it's 5 years now.
So that's just what's interesting is that's just about the same length of time I did. And I think for me, it was really, for me, 100% it was Fukushima. In May of 2012. That's what really, prior to that, I was actually getting politically involved. Like when they stole the election in 2000 and then 9/11 happened, that just set me off on a tangent. And I started literally, I used to fax in letters before, everybody did email and stuff. I would sit in my office. I had a headline called Roar. I created a writing campaign called Roar, Restore Our American Reputation, and the subtitle was called a grassroots demand for representation. And let me tell you what, I used to fax letters and give them all my opinions about all this stuff, the Iraq War, the 9/11 thing, the lies, it was just so obvious, right? So
yeah.
This is how I got my taste with Mike Pence. Mike Pence's office actually had me investigated because they are liars and murderers. Like he said, I threatened to murder his staff, and it got me investigated.
Well, I started this whole thing in about 1999.
Wow.
Not 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I got on the social media thing. That's when I started that. But
so you started
that,
doing
I was involved in other things with other groups.
What was your thing in 99?
Of 100,000 people, and with those 100,000 people, we were starting to make an impact, and the government started to take notice and started passing laws in certain districts and states forbidding what we were doing.
Mm-hmm. So what
and then
what
it wasn't long after before it got disbanded.
What was your catalyst for getting engaged in 1999?
A divorce.
Huh.
Looking for an answer other than having a liar soak me dry out of my life savings.
Uh-huh. So then you started looking
lawyers.
at the system. You started looking at the system.
Well, I was actually, this actually is a funny story because it goes back even further than that. I think it was even 5 years before that I was just doing my thing as a contractor and read the paper on a regular basis, more or less, to check what's going on, and then always checking the want ads to make sure I have enough work for next month. And I ran across an ad that said, make money at home, make up to $10,000 at home.
Excuse me, did you say you're a lawyer?
Making that kind of money sitting around at home in your underwear.
Justin?
I just couldn't imagine that. So I had to call. I had to find out what this was about. And I called, and I spoke to a gentleman who lived close to where I lived, and as it turned out anyway. And he said some things to me that planted seeds, and basically the bottom line was I needed $1,250 to get involved, U.S. And at that time, like it is today, the difference between Canadian and American dollars was like 40%. So I was looking at like $2,000. And I just didn't have that kind of extra money sitting around. And he made a point of making that clear, that most people don't. And here I was, I'm one of them too. So I just took it upon myself to keep my eyes open and look for signs in the real world of what he was talking about. And over the course of those 5 years, I found plenty of evidence of what he was saying. So I got a hold of him again 5 years later and took the plunge, got involved, and started learning to work instead of working for money. And I've been doing that ever since.
That's kind of, what do you mean learning to work? What organization is it? What did you do to get involved? Like what did you take a course? Is that what you're saying?
The whole thing was based around an education, a private education. One about sovereignty, one about your liabilities, one about land management and property rights, and about insurance and other things of importance that you don't really learn in school.
Mm-hmm. So is this part of the sovereign nation, the sovereign movement?
That has a bad connotation to it.
I know.
From a lot of different directions because it's misunderstood.
I know.
I was listening to a person you had interviewed a while back, a few months ago actually, who tried to make sense of what it was that he was representing, I guess, if you call it that. But a lot of people have pieces of the puzzle and not the whole puzzle because it's very difficult to do. It's not something for everybody, and it takes a lot of courage to stand in your own truth against the odds, against the cabal, against policymakers and people who try to intimidate and try to usurp power.
It does take some. I understand the sovereign movement. I mean, the hippie with the gun, Theo. Do you know who he is? Did you ever follow him?
No.
Well, he was the same way. He really was he really was into the sovereign movement, and it takes a definite stand because you have to change a lot of different things if you really get into that. So
it's
that's
the same as the food, okay? Either you eat GMO or you eat real food. Either you are standing in your own truth as a sovereign individual, or you're not, and you're a slave to statism. It's as simple as that.
So why don't you explain what that is, statism? When you say the word statism, why don't you explain that?
Statism is relying on government. Government actually has a purpose in society, but its role right now is reversed. What they should be doing is being repurposed to look after the things that they have power over, which is license. There was an organization, a pharmaceutical organization actually, in Africa that happened last week, where the opposition leader was appointed president of the country. I think it was in Kenya. And one of his first actions was to pull the license from the pharmaceutical company because they were responsible for the death of 500,000 people. That's what they should be doing. Not policing the people the way they are with nonsense.
Well, that is actually the whole interesting thing about having the policing of the people. It's people actually get used to it. Like the idea that all of our communications, every phone call we have is being tagged and bagged. You know what I mean? Like that everything that we have, the idea, but the whole idea behind the pharmaceuticals, though, is to control people. The idea behind pharmaceuticals is to keep people from being healthy. Because a lot of the pharmaceuticals are made
part of the wheel. It's a spoke in the wheel.
That's right. That's right.
There's many things working against us. It's just whether or not you fall for that trap, so to speak,
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a very interesting thing. So is this what motivates you? So you are an activist on a daily basis. Now, do you think that it's worthwhile to contact your elected leaders and officials? Do you think that that's a waste of time?
When I do it, it's in writing, because that's the only thing that matters. An affidavit stands in truth. Nothing else matters. You can talk till the cows come home. It doesn't mean anything. You put it in writing, it means something, because now they're responsible to take action for it. You're holding them to account.
So you send emails to them?
I send letters, registered mail.
Okay. So you don't do emails at all?
I get a receipt when I know that they've received it.
So, but don't you think if you send an email that would be the same?
No, it's not.
Well, you mean not legally?
Even though they want to make everything electronic, what it comes down to is your name and your signature, because you can have either a signature or an autograph. And there's a distinction between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Just like there's a distinction between what's lawful and what's legal. Legal is the process to make it lawful, but it is in no way a law.
Mm-hmm.
Those are for corporate entities. And that's what they turned everything into. Look what they're doing
is true.
With confiscation now. They don't even charge the person, they charge the house. And they confiscate it.
What do you mean they charge the house? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about that tool that the police have had for quite a number of years now. What do they call that again? It's a type of confiscation that they're able to just, at random, like there's a couple of stories on the news that you can find about it. Typically, let's say you're traveling with a bunch of cash across the country to buy a car, like one guy did, and the police stopped him and took his money. He had nothing to say about it.
I saw a story about a rapper who walked out of the bank with $100,000 in his pockets, right? And he got stopped by the police, and they arrested him because he had $100,000 in his bank, took his money, discovered he was a rapper, and then they said, oh, we're not giving it back to you. He had to take them to court to get his money back. It took him 6 months to get his money back.
He's lucky he got it.
For real, but $100,000, they had the nerve to just take legal money and take it. And their argument was that it's not really legal for you to walk around with a lot of cash. Like that makes you look suspicious because you have a lot of cash.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
I mean, they ended up losing the case, but that was a pretty interesting story. You know, it's deep on lots of levels. Just the harassment. You know, it makes you wonder if the guy had been a white multi-billionaire guy, would they have taken their money? Probably not. Probably not.
I don't know about that. I bet it happens more often than people are aware.
I'll bet you it doesn't happen to people who are in the establishment, like the Hollywood types.
Well, if you're in the know and you have a card, you know, those FU cards, then you get a free pass.
I guess. I mean, this is the interesting thing. I think this is what I mean, Justin. I think we're all coming into this, you know, this come to Jesus moment where we're realizing, we've been fed a pack of lies, literally, quite literally, and it's a dangerous pack of lies. They're killing us. They're killing our children. Cancer has skyrocketed among children. Look at this latest thing. You had something on your page about the flu killing people. When did we ever hear that the flu killed people? That's not the flu. It's something else they're putting in the air. And they're just, what really upsets me is the doctors, how complicit the doctors are. This is why I do not trust American doctors at all, because they are not willing. You know, like the simple thing, like you said, just take some baking soda in the morning, apple cider vinegar, you're good to go. Get some lemon juice in. Make efforts to eat a clean diet so you can stave off the attacks from the environment that literally, they are throwing at us.
Yep, that's the only way you can keep sane.
Well, I think that's the issue, isn't it? Keeping sane. That's the issue. And I think that's why a lot of people ignore it, though, Justin, is they don't want to have to think about it. They're barely, I have a friend of mine, a woman that I know that I thought we were friends. She basically stopped talking to me because I could not stop talking about Fukushima. She's like, do you have to think about that at every time? And I'm like, well, it's everywhere. How do you forget about it? Especially, how do you not remember it? Exactly. Yeah. And she said, you know, and we were talking about 9/11. She's like, well, you know, if I really believed everything you say, I know you're doing your research and you're thoughtful, but if I believed you, I would have a nervous breakdown. And I'm like, well, you don't have to. That's a choice. Disempowerment
again. That's disempowerment again, because it's overwhelming her. You know, and she doesn't see how to do this. This is the conversation we have to have with people, I think, is that it's not so overwhelming if you just take it one step at a time, you know?
That's what I said. I'm not overwhelmed by it, but I think it's important for us as adults to face it, because this is our reality.
Yeah, you have to face it. That's exactly it. There's no way that you can solve a problem if you don't know it's there. And as a matter of fact, going back to what you just said a minute ago, I do a lot of research, so one of the things I ran across that I found really interesting was that in the medieval times, kings would have declarations made by royal descent on what was real. And that's actually one of the things which developed into the language that we use as reality. What he declared was real was real. Whether it was real or not, it didn't matter. The king said so, so it was.
The emperor has no clothes.
Yeah.
That's really what it's about.
And this is what we're dealing with, is that the mainstream media, the governments, all these institutions are all feeding us a line of bull, and we're believing it because a lab coat says so, a uniform says so, a person in a three-piece suit says so. You know, those are the kind of things which people automatically, subconsciously believe is an authority. So they take the word for it, whether it's true or not, just because of where it's coming from, like your doctor. You don't question it because he knows best.
Right. That's right. Well, and the reality is, read the book, Death by Medicine. They kill 1 million people a year here in the United States. Every year.
I know.
And so, this is just an outrage, and people are willing to do it. They're willing to go along with it because they are afraid that they won't have the tools to be able to manage their own health. And yet, the reality is if you manage your own health, you stay healthier.
I think it's bigger than that even, Lonnie. It's that people don't see how we can do things differently without that system.
That's right.
And the thing is, there's a group of people I'm working with that are working towards a new paradigm shift, a new way of doing things so that the way that we have things set up today will become obsolete because nobody will want to do it. And one person who's heading one of the groups that's doing this, it's the organization is called Ubuntu Planet. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
I know Ubuntu, I know
Michael Tellinger.
Yes, I know Ubuntu.
Okay, but he's got a plan for cities and townships and so on to follow, which is a collaborative effort from everybody that enhances everybody's position. And the first city that took this on is in Canada here, near Ottawa. And it's called One Small Town. And I think it's a great idea for developing your own community, getting to know your people, and working together so that you have a common goal and everybody benefits from it. And then the export that's done.
Well, it's communal living. It's really based on communal living. It's based on everybody does their part and everybody has their own part to do. That's really the idea. And this is really what they did, like in the 60s, the late 60s. It was they had these. Yep. In fact, here in Oregon, they have a lot of intentional. That's intentional living where people live on the land and you contribute and do what you can do. You know what I'm saying?
No, this is different. This is an established community that's already there.
I'll be honest. I'm going to give you, this is going to be a disclaimer here. I've sort of been through the Ubuntu movement. I found Ubuntu to be extremely hierarchical, and I found it quite offensive, some of the things that Michael Tellinger would say. I think he has a bigotry that he doesn't even acknowledge. So I that's why I left the Ubuntu movement. If you've ever heard him speak, he talks about him growing up in South Africa where he got everything for free. So he decided, well, why can't we all have everything for free? Which is a right idea, except that he did not get it for free. He was living, his father was a miner, and the black people got nothing there for free. And Ubuntu is actually an African concept of living. And instead of going from a colonialist idea of where a few people at the top basically tell everybody else what to do, which is what happens with the Ubuntu community at the very top. Have you gotten involved with Ubuntu?
Oh, absolutely, I am, and I don't agree with what you're saying.
Well, I like the idea of Ubuntu. We should have a conversation about this. I like the idea of Ubuntu. I mean, I was engaged in an Ubuntu movement here in Oregon, and I found that hierarchically, connecting with the hierarchy of the organization, it was quite hierarchical. And I had a hard problem with him coming into town saying, well, I realized, why shouldn't everything be free? What he really ignored was the fact that he got nothing for free. It was on the lives of black people who were living in those mining towns. That's why he got everything for free.
Okay, let's not dwell on the past and what is in the past. Let's look at now and tomorrow of what this objective is, because that's what's more important. Ubuntu, I'll just read this to you. It's a little thing I posted this morning, actually. In certain regions of South Africa where someone does something wrong, he is taken to the center of the village and surrounded by his tribe for 2 days while they speak of all the good he has done. They believe each person is good, yet sometimes we make mistakes, which is a cry for help. They unite in this ritual to encourage the person to reconnect with his true nature. The belief is that unity and affirmation have more power to change behavior than shame and punishment. This is known as Ubuntu, humanity towards others.
I mean, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that at all. I'm all about the Ubuntu movement and spirit. But the way it has actually functioned, I mean, part of that is the Ubuntu philosophy comes from a culture that has been colonized. And this, we're talking about decolonizing the world. This is essentially what we're doing, is we want to get back to the roots where we respect each other. We don't freak out because people do things wrong. We help that person heal and reintegrate into the community again. I mean, I get the whole concept. I'm just saying I would love to see it really work. I know that here, how I saw it working did not work. And when we tried to reach out to the hierarchy of it, there's just not that. But you know what? This is a process. This is the point of us all. And I'm glad that we brought this up because I was engaged in it. But this is how we rebuild, is we hang on to ideas and concepts. And frankly, for me, not acknowledging that Ubuntu comes from a colonized state, a colonized culture, is important for me. Because in order for us to, we're talking about us having to decolonize, essentially, is what we're talking about, decolonization. Because the oppressors in South Africa are still there.
I agree with Chris Busby when he says what we need is a new ideology.
That's right. That's exactly right. In fact, I think we're actually forming it and shaping it, Justin. I think we're developing it. I think we're having our growing teeth now because we've realized that we swallowed a pile of junk. You know what I mean? Like, we have been programmed so deeply for so long that it's kind of like recovery, right? You don't just go, okay, that's it, I'm fine, I'm okay, I can do without, or I can live a different way. It comes up and it pops up. It's like being a survivor of child abuse, where throughout your entire life you realize there's another layer of onion to peel,
Well, that's where Stockholm Syndrome comes in.
Yeah.
I think everybody has an element of that in them because of being brought up into this environment. And it's toxic environment in every which way that you can imagine. Even hand cleaner is toxic.
Hand cleaner makes you sick.
Yeah.
Hand cleaner is like the stupidest. That's like the most incredible thing. People think, I'm going to sanitize my hands. Actually, our bodies need germs. Let's just put it that way. Germs are our friends because they keep us well and healthy. What we need is real food. We need plants. We need to eat food that grows out of the ground. We need to eat live food, real ground. Food. Exactly, clean ground. And you know what? Actually, my friend Charlotte Anthony, who did an interview or two here on my show, she's a permaculturist. Her whole big thing is getting everybody, start composting. Compost all your non-meat food. Even if you compost your GMO, it will eventually turn, in 3 years, the ground will remediate itself. But if you cannot eat GMOs, that's the best. But just compost your food and let's grow good microbes and plant that on the ground. That is what, especially since we're going to be having a planet that doesn't have much water, because you can farm without water if you have microbes, period. It's very interesting the way the whole thing, like Mother Earth, our planet, the whole computer brain of this planet is so much more intelligent than any of the pseudoscience we think we've created here.
Right.
It's pretty amazing. I'd love to get you back on and talk to you about Ubuntu, because it sounds like you're having a good experience with Ubuntu on your end of the woods there. So I really like the Ubuntu movement. I like the concept. We struggled. Ours, actually, you know what happened with the Ubuntu group here was it ended up... breaking off from the formal Ubuntu group, but the Ubuntu movement, I guess in Eugene, Oregon, the Ubuntu movement has been alive and well for a long time because there's a lot of intentional living people here anyways. There's a lot of people living off, not only off the grid, but creating cooperative housing, cooperative farming, the idea of taking care of people, dealing with things like, even here, it's an unusual place in that in Eugene, they even allow, they have these tent cities, like these little places where they don't rouse the homeless. They let them stay there during the winter in their tents, right? So they don't constantly have to do sweeps to keep that's the sad part, is the homeless population on our planet. So, because they get the most exposed.
Yeah, it's basically just coming down to the fact that we've become a slave to money rather than we being the master of it. And those people who are with the means have exploited the rest of us to the point where you have situations like that.
Well, but you know what, though?
An abundance of empty homes, and yet, a minimum amount of people that are out on the street. You could easily house them. It would be cheaper if they would do that, rather than give them money all the time.
Right. Well, the whole thing about it is, it's a system built on keeping inequity, so that the people at the top, because it's easy to control oppressed people. So that's the whole concept. Yep. Which is why they didn't want to tell us about Fukushima. I mean, if Fukushima had not blown up, if we had not watched it blow up with our own eyes, they would be telling us everything is fine, just fine, don't worry about it. We would have never known. Yes, they do. In fact, they're getting more. Those stories are coming out more and more. They're beginning to convince us. They're putting out these highly polished videos about how clean it is, even though they found, 42 sieverts outside of a nuclear power in Unit 2 last week or 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, did you see the latest delicacy they have there? Deep-fried leaves.
For real?
From their trees. For real.
No.
Yeah. And on top of it, Fukushima water, the public water supply, won an award in Geneva, Switzerland for the best water quality in the world. Tell me that isn't a load of horse crap.
Oh, God. Okay, then. Wow. That is just too much, for real. They
That's
actually gave them a award. Where would we find that? Where did you see that?
Nuclear Watch International. The community on Google Plus has all the information there, and remediation and mitigation techniques and good food that you should take on a regular basis or adapt into your diet.
Right. That's right.
And all the news and history that you could want. It's all there.
Nuclear news.
Nuclear Watch International.
Nuclear Watch International. Okay. Well, look, Justin, thank you for joining us for this last hour. It's been really a delight to have you on. I hope you can come back with us. Maybe we can get more specific. And I'd really love to do an interview with you about the Ubuntu, if you don't mind, because I'd really love to have that explored and see how well it's going in your community, because we need to form new ideas and new community. And that's the beautiful part. That's why I was drawn to it, because it really needs to. Not that it hasn't done some good out here, though, but there are some issues I had with it, and I'd love to talk to you about it. You've been listening to Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show here on ucy.tv/AOF. My guest today has been Justin Case. He is a Google Plus advocate, and he has, I would just suggest go find him on Google Plus, Justin Case, JUSTINCASE. Thanks, Justin.
Love is greater than fear.
That's right. Love is greater than fear. Put your courage feet on you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Power to the people.